I didn't think we start today's episode about referral with such a romantic reference, but I'm intrigued. This is the 20-Minute Attorney Business Development Podcast. My name is Steinemann, and here with me to discuss how lawyers can improve their referral marketing is the man who will tell me now when he last gave a not necessarily legal-related recommendation, Bill Burns.
Yeah, just the other day, someone asked me for a plumber. Saved their life by giving that recommendation. They were pretty happy.
Never a bad thing to know a good plumber, I guess.
Never a bad thing. I always tell attorneys that I work with, you want to be that person who people call when they need, not necessarily something that's legal related, but a plumber, an electrician, whatever. You want to be a source of information, a source of connections. So I think that lines up perfectly well with our referral topic today. You know, I tend to think about referrals. Interesting that you remember about 20 years ago, the movie Love Actually, and it starts out with Hugh Grant doing this narration with scenes from the arrivals gate at Heathrow Airport. And he kind of winds up about how, these are all messages of love and that love is all around. Well, I think that referrals are all around, and you just have to pay attention to them, and you have to be aware of where those referral opportunities exist because they're everywhere in your life.
I didn't think we start today's episode about referral with such a romantic reference, but I'm intrigued. So where can we find these referral sources then?
Well, I think, the key to good referral sources, like the key to being an excellent lawyer, is doing good work. Quite frankly, good work results in more work. And the most important referral source that I'd put at the top of my list is current clients. You're working with a client on a particular aspect of law, say on a corporate matter or a litigation matter, and then they come to you and say, hey, do you know someone who can handle our labor employment issue? And so you're able to refer a colleague, or you get referred that way because one of your colleagues is doing great work for a client, but they come up with a concern that attorney can't cover, but that you can cover. So I think, the place to start is with current clients. And if you're in a firm, with your colleagues in the firm. I worked with a couple of lawyers who grew up together as young associates. One was in corporate, one was in labor. And by the time they were partners, they were each giving the other a significant portion of work based on their own connections.
Interesting point is how we can work on these kind of referral sources and on our referral marketing, right? But I think before we actually do think about how we can increase these referrals or improve our referral marketing, I think there are two questions that we need to think about first. The first one would be who, in terms of people or actual persons, are potential referral sources. Who do people actually turn to if they are looking for a recommendation? And then the second question, these people, if they are asked for a recommendation, based on what kind of criteria do they decide who they will recommend? So it all comes back to understanding these potential referral sources.
It all comes back to the relationship points that we've been pounding, I guess, if you've been listening to these podcasts up to this point. We keep coming back to relationships and the importance of the strengths of the relationships, of trust. I mean, what factors do you think, when you are involved in a referral situation and you're going to recommend someone, what factors do you consider?
So maybe before we go there, just one step back. Okay. If you ask yourself, who are people turning to if they're looking for a recommendation? So I think it's a person that they actually know or trust, ideally. As you mentioned, you have this relationship. This part, I would say, is less interesting here because that's difficult for us to influence. And then it's probably someone that they know who has solved a similar problem that they have. That I think that could be a factor for choosing someone to ask for a recommendation. And then the third factor could be that they ask someone who knows lawyers, who knows how to work with lawyers, who knows what are the important elements to look out for in a lawyers. And the likelihood that someone who knows a lot of lawyers knows more than one person in a specific field, so has to actually make a decision who they will recommend, is quite high. So even if you ask someone for a specific lawyer in a specific field, this person probably knows more than one person and has to make a selection. So our goal is to position ourselves in the best way possible so that this person who is asked for a recommendation actually chooses us over the other person. And I think here there are a couple of factors that are important. So if I'm asked for a recommendation, I think about who do I have a personal relationship with? So who do I trust to send my contact to? The second part is, where do I think my client or my contact will get good service? I mean, all the lawyers can answer legal questions, some maybe a bit better than others, but the kind of service that my contact will get is kind of important. The third part that I consider is the personal branding of this person. So if my contact, what they actually will do is they will look out for on the internet about information on this person. So what kind of information will they find? Because the worst thing that can happen to me is that I recommend somebody, this person goes out and checks out that lawyer and then decides not to call that person, because that will also fall back on me because it was a poor recommendation. So I think that's kind of an important factor, and we can talk about that a little bit more. The fourth part is, if I recommend a lawyer and I don't hear from that lawyer after I send them my recommendation, I will not send a second recommendation. I don't expect a gift or anything, but just a quick note saying, hey, thank you for trusting me with your contact. I think that's quite an important sign for the value of the relationship. And then the last part is probably reciprocity. So who did refer work to me, that I know that this is a potential referral source, and then that increases the likelihood that I would send someone a contact of mine.
There's a couple of interesting points to drill down on there, Toby. I mean, how do you determine whether someone's going to reciprocate your referral?
Well, obviously, if it's the first recommendation in a relationship, it's quite difficult. You could never know for sure 100% if that's going to be the case. I think it's just a guess, but maybe, I mean, there is somebody who already did refer work to me, so that could be an indication, but you never know for sure. That would probably be a bit of how well you know people and where you trust somebody.
We run into a lot of situations where there are other service providers, other professional service firms who want to connect with our clients. And it's, if you're really paying attention, you can tell pretty easily whether this is going to be a two-way street or not.
So how do you tell? What are you listening to? What factors?
I'm really listening to make sure whether they are trying to understand what we're trying to accomplish with our clients, rather than a focus on what they're trying to accomplish and what they offer. I mean, like I've said before, nobody wants to be pitched, and I don't like to be pitched in a referral situation either. I just want to know, how someone can really help me. And if I think they can help me, then I'm going to turn to them as a referral source. If not, then I won't do that. Another factor that I often think about is also the personality of the two individuals. Some people just aren't the kind of personalities they're going to click. Or sometimes I know someone who has a particular level of experience, but it may not be a high enough level of experience to satisfy the person who has asked me for a referral. Sometimes it's, for certain referral sources, you need someone who has a high amount of gravitas, someone who comes across as a very serious and focused person. And sometimes that's just a huge factor in determining whether I make that referral.
That's actually a very interesting point, and something I never actually thought about consciously, maybe subconsciously. When I selected the person I recommended, I probably thought about whether it's a good fit, but obviously it plays a big role. It's just like something that is very difficult for us to influence if we think about how to improve our referral marketing, right?
So, let's drill down a little bit on, what some other referral sources are, or why, certain people make good referral sources. So, for example, I think it's obvious that you start with other attorneys. And I often, in particular with litigators, because I think litigators need a larger market than corporate lawyers or labor and employment lawyers do in terms of geographic scope, I always encourage the litigators that I work with to join national or international organizations so that they can make relationships with individuals in other jurisdictions. So when those people have opportunities for work based on conflicts or limited capabilities or limited practice scope, they know who to call. I know you and I have both been involved with the International Association of Young Attorneys, and I just saw their referral statistics, and they were stunning at how high they were, that, those people have developed really close relationships around the globe.
And in your view, so what do people need to do if they go to these kind of events and take part in these associations? Is it sufficient to just be a member and just go to the events, or is there something that people can do to actually get some referrals out of these activities?
Well, like with any conference or any event, I think you need to go with intention and need to enter into it with a plan. I think you need to approach it as a long game, that it's going to take involvement over a number of years. That I think it's important to, once you develop relationships with people when you're at an event, to follow up with them in between events and really develop a relationship over time. Because again, you have to have that trust. Just because someone is an attorney in Switzerland, for example, it doesn't necessarily mean that I know that they're a good attorney in Switzerland, or that their character is what I'm looking for, or their skill level is what I'm looking for. So you have to develop that over time, and that takes an investment of time, just like your investment of time with any prospect.
At these events, a lot of the activities, they happen at like social events. So it's a lot of cocktails and bars, and you go out and then you have fun, and that's all good. Is that sufficient for actually getting a recommendation or referral, if you're just like known as a party person and are always there when like people are drinking and having fun? Or is there something more to it in your view?
Well, I don't think you want to project yourself as a party person. I mean, you certainly want to take advantage of those social situations, because those really are where a lot of connections are made. But I think it's also important to do things that position yourself as a substantive leader or expert in your area. So, speaking opportunities, trying to be on panels, trying to, get involved in an organization where you're leading a subgroup or a subcommittee, and you're actually working with people where you start to show your work skills and your work ethic. So I think it's a combination of the two factors that you have to have in place. You have to do the social side to get to know who people are and let them know who you are as an individual. But you also have to show your depth of experience, your depth of knowledge, and your interest in a subject.
At some point, people have to understand what you're capable of in terms of legal practice, and not just what kind of cocktails you drink.
Right. And a lot of people want to shortcut that process. I'm highly skeptical of these pay-to-play opportunities out there, where you pay a bunch of money and the firm indicates that we're going to bring in-house counsel from these companies, and you're going to do a version of speed dating and get to meet all these people. I think that is actually the counter to what you want to do in terms of developing relationships. It does take an investment of time, and I don't think that happens at that type of an event. You can't short circuit the process.
I didn't even know that this was a thing.
It does exist. I know attorneys who have approached me about participating, and I always advise against it. I just think that that's not how you develop relationships. And I'll go back to what I said at the beginning of the podcast when I say that, referral opportunities are all around. It's how you conduct yourself on a day-to-day basis. There's lots of different ways to develop referral relationships that are a lot more authentic and a lot more long-lasting than to some type of a pay-to-play event.
When preparing for today, I actually read a couple of articles about referral marketing, and I found this one blog post on a marketing blog that focuses on professional services. And there I read a quote where they say, on average, most firms, so professional services firms, only hear from 2 out of 10 referrals. If that's true, that would mean 80% of the people who got a recommendation, they never reach out to the firm or the person that was recommended to them. And obviously that's quite a big number. What's going wrong here? I mean, what could go wrong? I mean, obviously one reason that somebody doesn't reach out to you is based on relevance. So they look at your profile online. They don't see anything that they don't see anything that would tell them that you can actually be the one that solves their problem. That can be a good thing if your positioning is right and your messaging is on point, so people understand truly what you're doing. Then if this person doesn't reach out, it's probably a good thing, because you don't want to work with these kind of clients.
Well, just to that point, just because I talk to attorneys about this every day, when was the last time you updated your bio? Is it reflective of what you're doing now? Does it cover the areas that you're offering advice and counsel to your clients? People don't pay attention to that, but it's out there working for them all the time, or maybe in this instance, it might be working against them.
Yeah. Lawyers and law firms, they tell me we don't want to invest that much in terms of branding or websites or social media, because our business is based on referrals. But I think that's a massively flawed approach, because all of these things massively influence whether you get these referrals. And I mentioned 2 out of 10 referrals that they never reach the recommended person. And I think part of that is because that online footprint is not well taken care of. So you need to make sure these people actually understand who you are and what you do, and they give them a reason to actually reach out to you, make it interesting and appealing for them to actually reach out to.
I wish I had $1, or in your case, €1, for
It's a
every
Swiss
time
franc.
was frank, and for every time I've been in a situation with a prospect where we mention an attorney and the prospect immediately looks them up online.
Yeah, I mean, it's a natural thing to do. It's
Well, that's what you and I. It's what I do every time someone mentions someone or mentions a prospect. I'm online looking them up right away.
yeah. And I mean, that's why branding and referrals go hand in hand. And when I say branding, I not just mean design of the website or like a visual thing. It's more, it's about the content. Where do you appear? Who are you associated with? What is kind of the messaging, the content? Everything is relevant. The language you use, that's all part of your branding and all part of that digital footprint. Referral marketing doesn't happen without good branding, or it happens better with good branding.
And we could spend an entire episode talking about individuals' digital footprint.
Goes on the list of potential episode topics.
Absolutely.
So just to finish off, maybe the list that I mentioned, or the reasons why I think that referrals are getting lost. So one is relevance. I think then the second part would be, or the second point would be that you maybe sound too salesy. So you have the sales talk or the sales language before you actually are interesting. So I think first be interesting and then start the sales conversation, because then people are actually approachable for that kind of talk. Then I mentioned the website is not really appealing, ugly, or outdated. It's neglected. I think that's also a reason why you lose people. Then differentiation is a problem. So if you look or sound like the next firm, then people will just forget about you and reach out to somebody else or not reach out to anyone. And then the people never heard of you. I think that's also something that could be an issue. So if they already heard about you at some other point, or they find some sort of proof on the internet in other sources about you and your capabilities, I think that will highly boost the likelihood that a person who got a recommendation for you actually will reach out.
So Toby, you tick all the 5 boxes for me. I'm referring everybody I know who needs, marketing in your corner of the world. They're coming your way.
As long as you don't refer me as a co-host for other podcasts, that's quite good, because my capacity for doing podcasts is full with this one.
Mine too.
Maybe one last point that I would like to make today is, you mentioned potential referral sources from like people around you, but I think there are a lot of potential referral sources that we don't see. So kind of invisible referral sources. And that's why I sometimes have an issue with people saying you only have to do the good work and that will sort of give you recommendations and referrals, because I think it's about a lot more. If you do good work, then obviously you will become an expert in your field. You will do excellent work. You will make a lot of clients very, very happy, and you will gain some recommendations from them. But if you manage to, in addition to your expertise, gain visibility for that kind of expertise, you will generate almost a kind of a followership. If you become a thought leader in your field, and you make this visible to others, you will have people follow you, the content, the things you say, the things you write, and you might not even know them, but at some point they will become a potential referral sources. So even for us, I mean, not all the recommendations that we got, all the referrals came from people that I actually have personally interacted with, but they read somewhere a couple of things from us, and they follow our LinkedIn profile, they read our blogs, they read our newsletters, and they maybe listen to our podcast. I think these kind of things are important, just to make it visible that you're kind of an expert beyond the circle of people that you actually work with.
I think that's absolutely true. I just had coffee with a friend the other morning, and he had mentioned that he had referred our podcast to someone who was not an attorney, but who was in a business development position, told him that he could learn a lot of lessons from us. So it happens in very strange ways sometimes. So I've got a thought. This is a thought from my collegiate days when I was in a marketing class, and our assignment for the day was to write down every time we saw an advertisement over the next 24 hours. And it was a stunning exercise because you didn't realize how much advertising you actually see, how much branding you actually see. Well, I would encourage our listeners to, try a similar exercise and think about how many referral sources they encounter in a 24-hour period. Just a way to broaden your mind and your way of thinking about who's a potential source for future business.
That's an interesting idea. Having a little bit of awareness for these kind of things is definitely a good thing.
That might be a great place just to start.
A place to start and a place to finish. It's time for us to conclude this episode. Bill, thank you very much. And I look forward to talking to you next time.
Great to talk to you always.